Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for Eve Echoes. Now, the more astute amongst you may have spotted that today's video does not have an intro where I'm stood in front of the camera somewhere in my garden or around Zimbabwe. There are three main reasons for that. First of all, we had a massive freak storm this afternoon that took out our internet for a couple of hours and has basically flooded the garden and made everything look wet, grey and miserable. Secondly, I'm not feeling particularly well, as I'm sure you can hear. My voice is up the creek at the moment and just not in a great sort of situation. I've got a bit of a bad throat going on, and most importantly, bless her, my wife has been man down for the past couple of days with an illness as well, so I've spent time when I'm not making content looking after her to the best of my capability. I wasn't prepared to sort of take her, drag her around the houses looking for a nice backdrop to do an intro and to get her to be camera woman for me, so ultimately that's why there's no graphic intro today. Now, today's video is sort of a three-parter. It's a kind of what happens now that the test server's down, plus a little bit of look at today's patch notes, plus an update regarding exploration. And we're going to do those in approximately that order. We're going to start with the patch notes, we're then going to talk about exploration, and then we're going to talk about what happens now that the test server is over. So, if you enjoy this video, let me know by hitting a like on it, sub to the channel for all things Eve Echoes, ding the notification bell to never miss an upload. I am uploading daily at around about 9 o'clock PM UTC. Monday to Friday I tend to aim to be Eve Echoes content, Saturday and Sunday tends to be bonus that could be Eve Echoes or other games. Obviously Diablo Immortal's a big thing on my playlist at the moment as well. And if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel, I've got a Patreon and a Redbubble merchandise store that you can check out if you just fancy, helping to support this channel in a little bit of an extra mile way, and I really, really do appreciate every single one of you. I am still trying to revamp my Patreon. I know it's taking ages. I've said like a month ago now that I was working on it. Trust me, it is being worked on. You'll see eventually, hopefully, when I get it all fixed and sorted. Anyway, all of that said and done then, let's jump in. First of all then, let's have a look at today's minimalistic patch notes. There was an update today, as the test server closed. Nothing humongous, but heck, let's have a look at the notes anyway. Optimizations 1. Updated estimated prices according to current market transaction records. Fair enough, again, I personally do like that they are still tweaking the AI manually and helping to teach it. That's a good thing to me. Yes, the idea is that ultimately this should all be automated, but for now I like the fact that NetEase is sort of keeping a steady hand on top of this. Secondly, added some previously missing translations. And that's it for the optimizations. For the bug fixes, they fixed an issue where players could not see structure component blueprints on the corporation manufacturing page. They fixed an issue where some players could not initiate or view item exchange contracts. They fixed an issue where some players would see a black screen after switching to the test server. This issue can be fixed by reinstalling the game. I genuinely had this one. I came back from the test server to live and just couldn't log in. It just went to a black screen. Reinstalling the game worked, but then I couldn't get in directly that way either, and had to actually grab the OBB files off my old Razer Phone 2 and reinstall them on my Asus ROG Phone 3 here. So I'm glad that has now been fixed. Fourth and finally then, added translations to the item delivery notifications triggered by the destruction of your corporation citadel. Nothing overly exciting, I suppose, unless you are one of the people who those translations matter to. Now, I think translations are always a very important part of this. I think it's great when a game is translated in such a way that people can play in their native and most comfortable language. Obviously, not everyone speaks Chinese, not everyone speaks English, so having things like Russian, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Japanese, all these other different countries and languages, I think is a really good way of making sure that everyone is included to the best of their ability. Now, before we go further, I just want to make something abundantly clear when we talk about Eve Echoes and the team building this. This is not some humongous team of hundreds and hundreds of developers, as I think some people seem to imagine. From what I gather, it's actually closer to 15 developers, somewhere around about the sort of 12 to 17 developers working on Eve Echoes. That's your coders, that's your artists, designers, balance, the whole lot. It's all there. It's a small team doing their best to make this game work. And is the game working? Well, that depends on your metric. If you look on the Google Play Analytics, you can see that from Android, Eve Echoes through April was getting about 25 to 30,000 logins per day, which is pretty big. As an idea, Eve Online gets around about 25 to 30,000 logins just, total. per day, whereas Eve Echoes is getting that just on Android. You then have all the iOS players as well on top of that logging in. So we've got a very healthy player base. We've still got more players on here than EVE Online, and remember EVE Online is that game that broke 2 world records thanks to its player base earlier this year. So is Eve Echoes dying? No. Not at all. It's just lost a lot of players since its absolutely phenomenal launch, and it's plateaued down to what I would refer to as its core player base. You'll find that when new patches and new content gets added, there's a whole wave of new people who join in, and eventually a lot of those will gradually drop off, and will come back to sort of around that core. So it looks that about the 30,000 on Android, 25 to 30,000 on Android is about our core player base, plus iOS on top of that. Interestingly enough, though, in regards to its figures, despite how well the game is doing in terms of its player base, it's only making, on Android at least, about $600,000 a month, which sounds like a lot of money, and quite frankly it is a lot of money. You know, heck, I would love to have that amount of money hitting my bank account each month, but as far as mobile games go, it's not that much at all. $600,000 a month is a pitiful amount when you compare to games like PUBG that are making 280 million a month. Like, this is not even a percentile of what those games are making. And of course I know PUBG is a much bigger game than Eve Echoes, let's not fool ourselves here. But just the amount of money that this game makes is not that big comparatively. So this means we need to bear that in mind when we have expectations in regards to content. Now, I say expectations in regards to content because we've had some bad news this week. Exploration has been delayed. It looks like Exploration now is only going to be launched in June, which knee-jerk response from me was, oh, that's disappointing. Exploration is one of these things I've been waiting for since Eve Echoes first launched. I thoroughly enjoy it in EVE Online, and having seen sort of a sneaky peek of what Eve Echoes Exploration looks like, and a spoiler alert, it looks amazing and very, very different. I did a video on this, the sneaky peek stuff. I'll put a link on screen now and in the description below. To go and check that out and see what Exploration's like in Eve Echoes, or what we think it might be like at least. The knee-jerk reaction was, oh, that sucks, we don't get it until June. But then I stopped and I thought about it, and I think that's actually a good thing. Now, a quick rumour control here. For some reason, people seem to think that Exploration is going to be locked behind Tech Level 10. Now look, I have no proof to what I'm going to say here. I've got no proof to say that you're all wrong, but I'm going to say it. I don't believe that Exploration is locked behind Tech 10. When you hit Tech Level 5, it used to have an alert saying that the Exploration skills were now available for training. Exploration was a new thing. That's also where you get the Covert Ops frigates, which of course are our main exploration things. And it's like saying, it's kind of like saying, you know, oh, stealth, you know, you can't use tackle frigates until you hit Tech 10 on the interceptors, or you can't use target painters until you unlock the bellicose, and that's just simply not the case. Yes, we get the dedicated exploration frigates at Tech 10, but I'm pretty sure the skills are going to be around about Tech 3, Tech 5, somewhere there. This is a core mechanic in EVE Online. It is intended, from what I gather from everything we've spoken to from the devs, to be a core mechanic in EVE Echoes 2. The developers have confirmed that every ship in the game has some form of scanning capability, so it makes no sense to assume that it's going to be locked to Tech 10 just because that's where the exploration frigates are. If every ship can do scanning, why would you assume that you can only scan once you're at Tech 10? It just makes no sense to me. It looks much more like Exploration is going to be available anywhere between Tech 3 and Tech 5. My personal guess is Tech 5, which is nice and early on to get you sort of having a go down that exploration route. Anyway, so yeah, knee-jerk response was it's disappointing that it's been pushed back. I've been looking forward to covering this and talking about it and getting to do it. Now I've got to wait another month. But the second thought on this, and this brings me into nicely what happens now that the test server's closed, that's the point. There have been so many complaints and sort of so much overwhelming feedback about this test server that NetEase have said, right, okay, we need to take some time to get this right. That means we can't be working on this and Exploration. So Exploration is being pushed back to make way for the balance patch to actually be tweaked comfortably. Now, I'm not going to lie, there were some cool things about the balance patch, some of which might be a bit controversial. Firstly, I think armor tanking does feel a lot better. It doesn't quite feel right to me, but it definitely feels better. I'm still a little bit concerned that some, especially like the large armor repairers, are ridiculously high power grid requirements, and so there is a part of me that looks at that and goes, you know what, that could be a problem further down the line. But armor tanking now is pretty viable, and it's interesting to see that some of the ships that I would normally shield tank, like the Hurricane, do work surprisingly well as armor tanks. And so there is certainly a reason now to perhaps consider maybe armor tanking something like your Cinnabal. These are genuine things you could look into, but definitely things like your Amar ships and your Galente ships now do very well as Amar tank, as armor tank, sorry, Amar tank, lol. But it means if you've got a ship that has bonuses to things like armor repairers or armor resistance, you may find it is actually a lot better to fit that armor tank now with shield. Secondarily, I think the changes to destroyer speed is nice. It means they do hold pace with cruisers. As someone pointed out to me though, the Stabber fleet issue is still 5 meters per second faster than the destroyer 2 assault ships, which still is disappointing, but hey, there we go, it's not the be-all end-all. The Stabber is a very fast cruiser. It puts them on par with the other cruisers at least, but it's still not enough to make destroyers viable. We still have a lot of issues with things being up at tech level 10, and just there not being all that much content below that. As some people have said, not everyone are day one players, and I kind of get that. I wish the game was a little bit more horizontal than vertical. I wish that verticality on the tech tree was related to skills. And as I've said before, I use the Hurricane as an example for this. I wish that at Tech 7 you had access to the Hurricane. And the Hurricane, the Tech 7 Hurricane, is the highest DPS variant of the Hurricane itself. You might find there are other Hurricanes in the game, but the Tech 7 version is the highest DPS and the best for solo use. Then at tech level 8 and 9, for example, and maybe tech level 10, you get things like the Hurricane Guardian, the Hurricane E-War, and the Hurricane Logistics. The Hurricane Logistics sacrifices all of its DPS and some of its tanking capabilities to make itself a logistics vessel. The Hurricane Guardian loses all of its DPS capabilities but becomes tanky as all heck. And then the Hurricane E-War or Hurricane Commander there, again, they have lower DPS and lower tank, perhaps, but more capability with their electronic warfare and command bursts. That, to me, makes things interesting. It means that players have an actual choice about which type of Hurricane they're going to fly, and the higher tech ones require more skill and training, perhaps, but they're also more specialised. They fill a specialised role. The lower the tech level, the more generic a ship should be. That's how I kind of envision this. But NetEase seem very keen to have this thing that you basically work your way through about a year of playing the game, and then eventually end up at tech level 10, where you have access to all of the best ships, and it seems they want all of the ships represented there. I was asked via a couple of the mods on the Discord to help provide a list for Exile, one of the mods, one of the developers, about what ships I personally felt were missing, and I've done that. I've talked, if you've watched my problem with small ships video, you know what my list is, along with some things missing from the battleships, and especially cruisers as well. There are some definitely missing spots that should absolutely be tied up and sorted, and I'm glad that NetEase are taking that feedback. I'm glad they're taking the time as well to push exploration back and actually go through these changes. I have been told by Joseph that a lot of the purpose of these current balance changes is to sort of fit in for the summer update. There's more stuff coming in summer, apparently, that perhaps they're referring to the August update there, I don't know, it just said the summer update, where these balance changes will make a bit more sense there. So there's a method to the madness, I suppose, and I think a lot of the things that we don't necessarily understand and seem crazy and pointless to us make a bit more sense further down the line. Now, the controversial point that I wanted to make is that whilst I think it's great that everyone's DPS has gone up, it's nice to see higher numbers on paper, and whilst it's nice to see that everyone's armour and that has gone up, etc. as well, you'll notice that your ships are tankier and everything deals more damage, I actually quite like that the rats are pretty tough to handle now. I think that some of the rats being very sort of difficult to kill does mean that looking at Tech 10's storyline encounters, for example, you're now looking to do this in a fleet rather than soloing it. And I know a lot of people are like, you know, please don't take away my Tech 10 storyline encounters. The issue is, that is breaking the game. It genuinely is. I know that's hard to believe, and it's hard to kind of feel like, you know, the thing that you're enjoying and making most ISK is breaking the game, but it needs to happen. The people who are sitting there soloing Tech 10 storylines in something like a Dominic's nice and safely from 150 kilometers away, same with the Raven, etc., ultimately, those are guaranteed ISK faucets. That is ISK being injected into the system. And ultimately, if there's no reason to ever pay any of that ISK, once you've got your Dominic's or your Raven fully geared up in C-type gear or whatever it is you're using, once you've got it fully fitted and you're doing that content, what are you spending that ISK on? It's just hoarding it at that point, at which point ISK begins to devalue. Plex becomes more expensive, ISK devalues, and the market begins to stagnate and stall. So it's important that the people who are at the top doing this kind of content should ultimately have that toned down a bit. I get that it can be thrilling trying to solo a Tech 10 storyline, but the bottom line is it's not meant to be soloed. They are meant to be done in fleets and groups, so if it takes a bit longer for you to do it now, I think that's kind of the point. And I know that's controversial. I know a lot of people are going to be angry with me for saying that. I don't mean to be like rude or aggressive towards anyone's particular playstyle. I know people enjoy that playstyle. I know it's probably the way, you know, it might be the way that you yourself have fun. I'm not picking a go at you. I'm just saying that it was never intended for people to be able to solo these quite as easily as they have been. It's causing problems in the game, therefore it needs to be dialed back on, and I'm all for that. The nerfs to the Dominic's were to help assist with that, plus the increases to Rat's tankiness, etc. Again, slows down those storylines a bit. You can still do the storylines. I mean, look, if you're flying a Raven or a Dominic's and already doing Tech 10 storyline encounters, you're not going to suddenly not be able to do them. The nerfs were minor enough, and the buffs to the Rats were minor enough. You're still going to be able to do it. It just takes you slightly longer, which means you don't generate as much ISK per hour as you were before. But remember, we're also about to get the scanning added in, which should help you find more lucrative anomalies to go into as well, which may be another source of income for you. So, where one hand taketh away, another hand giveth. At least, that's my theory here. And it genuinely does look like, from what I'm hearing on the content creators channel in Discord, it does feel genuinely like the developers are taking this seriously. They kind of look and have gone, right, okay, what we suggested clearly wasn't good, it's not what people have wanted, how can we fix this? And I know that I'm a fairly vocal voice. I have an opinion, and I believe it should be this way. I have chats with people like Nina who will then say, no, you're wrong, Benzie. If you do it this way, this will happen. And I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of what I want to happen. And different people have different opinions. And there are always going to be cases where the developers sit there and say, okay, that's a really cool idea, and I see why you want that, but it's not our vision for the game. We want it to be this way. So ultimately, the decision does come down to them. I think it's an important point to remember. We are ultimately on this ride with the developers. This is not necessarily... It's not a communist game. It's not that everyone has the right to, you know, decide what this game's going to be like. Ultimately, the end result does lie with the developers. And as someone pointed out to me recently, which was a really interesting point, Western developers tend to be very community-orientated, and Western gamers have responded to that. We expect to give feedback to developers and our feedback to be heard and things to just go the way that we want it to, which does cause a lot of problems. If you look in certain games where players scream for things, those things get added and then it just breaks the game. Whereas in sort of more Chinese markets, the Chinese player base is more used to having their gameplay dictated to them. This is the game. This is how it works. If you like it, enjoy our game. If you don't like it, there are other games out there for you, and that's the mentality they have. And it's nice to see that NetEase are now trying to cross that boundary and do both. They're trying to listen to our feedback and give us what we're asking for, but at the same time, they accept that they are the top dogs here, they are the ones making the decisions, it's their fingers coding all of this, so the final decision comes down to them for better or for worse. All we can do is keep giving our feedback and keep hoping towards a better future, which I will keep saying, and I'm honestly feeling a lot better about this now. The fact that exploration has been pushed back initially upset me, but then I stopped and thought, actually, that's a good thing. It means the developers are listening. They are taking into consideration what's happening and people's lashbacks. So, who knows? Fingers crossed it'll all be fixed. Anyway, this is me rambling on entirely too long. I can feel my throat about to give way, so I need to go and put the kettle on and make myself a nice strong cup of coffee. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on all of this. I'd be really interested to know what you guys thought of the test server, if there were things like the balance patch changes and that I'm not talking about the ships here, I'm talking about the actual changes, like to weapon damage, to shielding and tanking, armor tanking, that kind of thing. I want to know what you guys think of all of that. We've done a giveaway last weekend, on Sunday I think it was, on Sunday's video. That will be announced later this week, and I will look to actually set these in stone as a giveaway every Monday or Tuesday, or there'll be a day of the week where I actually do a weekly giveaway in a much more concrete and recognisable format. I've thinking of ideas for that, so if you've got any cool ideas for how you think a giveaway could be done, I'd love to hear it in the comment section down below. I love Geek of Forta's way of doing a community question of the week. I'd be tempted to steal that, but it feels a little bit like plagiarism and copying another player's notes. Anyway, folks, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Otherwise, thank you for listening to my poor little voice ramble all the way through this one right the way to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.